Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 32 of Import Nights, the review series for GranTurismo's JDM performance car lineup. And this particular vehicle is kind of easy to overlook within the JDM class, at least from what I've seen. You don't see a huge amount of people using this car. It comes in two primary variations. You've got the Corolla and the Sprinter. And this particular variant in the video is the Sprinter model. Now both models do look slightly different, and although I have bought both of them before, I can't recall if there are any major performance differences between the two. That being said, these are very cheap cars, so if you want to buy both and find out, it doesn't exactly cost a lot to do so. Now, speaking of that price, this car only costs just under 19 grand, and even within the JDM class, that is cheap, because JDM cars in general have excellent value for money, but this really does put it potentially over the top to be one of the very best, because of just how cheap it is. Now, just being cheap, of course, isn't enough to make a car good value. That makes it affordable, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good deal. For it to be a good deal, it needs to offer a lot of performance or a competitive package for that price. So the question is, does it do that? Well, I would say in the case of this car, yes, it definitely does. And so it begs the question, why don't you see more people using them? Especially JDM fans, because I've raced in a number of online lobbies, some cruises as well, where JDM cars are popular or are the focus of the lobby, and even then, you just don't see people using these cars. Now obviously, there are far more obvious options and favourites within the JDM class for people to use. Supras, RX-7s, Skylines, etc. But you would expect at least some people to use this, and although there are certainly fans of the car, there's not as many as I would have expected, considering just how good this car actually is. Now, I must admit, this is a car which I didn't take that seriously. I'd owned it for a while on GranTurismo, but it wasn't until this series, preparing for this series, that I actually took note of just how good this car was, because I would go so far as to say that this car is Toyota's equivalent of the DC2 Integra. Now, the Honda Integra Type R, in particular the DC2, but also the DC5, I'm a huge fan of both, is among my favourite Japanese cars ever. It's right up there with the RX-7 for me. And so, for me to put this car in the same playing field as an Integra DC2, in particular, is a pretty bold statement. So, why do I say that? Well, consider how many similarities the car has. It came out at around a similar time, although the Integra did come out a couple of years earlier, but still, they're very close, around 95, 98. The engine on this model is a similar size. It's actually slightly smaller than the Integra at a 1.6 litre. It's turbocharged. It's a two-door, mid-sized coupe with front-wheel drive, again, just like the Integra, and that engine puts out 365 horsepower and 208 foot-pounds of torque. So similar numbers to the Integra, depending on the year, not necessarily quite as good, but in the same kind of ballpark. The weight, though, is even closer, because with the full weight loss package, this car only weighs 903 kilos, and that is very good, outstanding in fact, and I would say probably lighter than it looks. Again, the DC2 Integra shares a very similar advantage. The horsepower per tonne is 404, which is far better than easily could have been thanks to that low weight, and the PP is 501, again, fairly similar to the Integra. So, apart from the specs, which across the board are certainly good enough to rival Integra DC2s, does it actually manage to even come close to how good the Integra can be around the track? And if it can, why don't you see more people using it? That question comes back. Well, first things first, I would say that this is not quite as sharp as a DC2 Integra. The DC2 Integra is, in my opinion, possibly the best front-wheel drive car ever made, purely from a performance and handling point of view. There are certainly quicker front-wheel drive cars and perhaps better handling ones when tuned especially, but in particular for its all-round package, even without any tuning, tinkering, upgrades, etc. It's such a good car in every way. Now, this particular vehicle, as I said, I don't believe is as sharp or as good as the DC2, but it's certainly close enough, I would say, to be probably its best rival in terms of that all-round package and value for money. And a particular advantage that I would say this car has is that it's not as well known for being good as the Integra. You mention the name Integra Type R to pretty much anyone who knows cars and who likes cars, and they will immediately know you're talking about a great performance car. You mention this car, and, well, most people will probably think you're talking about the AE86 model, which brings us to the second point. Why isn't this car used more if it's as good as I'm saying it is? I think that may be the main reason. This car is so overshadowed by the iconic AE86 Corolla and Sprinter that I think people just forget about this model. Now, maybe that's not the case, but that seems to be the most obvious conclusion to me, the most obvious reason at least, as to why this one wouldn't get the exposure and use that it deserves, because the AE86 is of course a brilliant car. It's a great drifter, it's a great low budget performance car, and so with the status that the AE86 has, well, of course this isn't going to live up to that. Maybe that is the case, maybe it isn't, but either way, this car definitely deserves more exposure. So if you haven't tried out either the Corolla or the Sprinter of this particular shape, especially if, like me, you are a fan of the DC2 Integra, I would really recommend giving this car a chance, because it may just surprise you by how good it actually is. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.